Success Insight shares the stories of the people with passion and drive who make things happen in the world. Here's your host, Howard Fox.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Success Insight podcast. Today's guest is Lena Sisco. Now, Lena is the founder and president of the Congruency Group. She is the author of Your Line, Secrets from a Military Interrogator to Spot the Lies and Get to the Truth. And she has also authored Marine Scout Snipers. Lena is a former Navy intelligence officer and DoD certified interrogator. Since 2003, she has been training the government, military, law enforcement, and the private sector in interviewing, interrogation, body language, detecting deception, elicitation, leadership, and enhanced communication skills. She has trained and keynote spoke around the globe and is internationally recognized as an expert in her field. Oh my God, all these accomplishments. And something, let's just dive right in here. Lena, it's so great to have you on the Success Insight podcast.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Fantastic. I have to say, you are living a very interesting life, and we are living in interesting times. What I'd love if you could share with our listeners a little bit of the backstory. How did you get into this line of work? I mean, did you wake up one day, saw a TV show, met somebody? But I'm really curious about that.
Okay, I'll give you the abridged version. When I was young, I wanted to be Indiana Jones. I loved Indiana Jones. All I wanted to do was archaeology and travel the world and go on adventures. And I actually did that. I got my master's from Brown University in Old World Archaeology and Art. I got to dig in Greece and Tuscany. So I was living the life of Riley. It was absolutely amazing and beautiful. But when I got my master's, I didn't have a job. And my dad's like, don't think that I'm going to support you. So you got to find some work. And I couldn't really find any work in archaeology. And I had a friend who just joined the Navy. And he said, you love adventure and you love to travel. You should join the Navy too. And at first I was like, I don't think so. But the more he told me about it, the more I was like, you know what? Why not? I don't have a job. Instead of being Indiana Jones, I'll go be James Bond because I was joining Navy intelligence. And I thought, this is just as cool, right? Because I always wanted to do the cool stuff. And I joined for 6 years. And I thought at that point, what's 6 years?
Yeah. Well, how did you end up in Navy intelligence? Because, first of all, I have to say, if I could turn back the hands of time, I probably should have joined the military. It would have been a great experience. And you and I might not be having this conversation because things might have gone a different trajectory, but it would have been, I thought, good for me. So you joined the Navy. How did you end up in intelligence, naval intelligence?
So I guess I was lucky because I joined specifically to be part of naval intelligence.
Really?
That was it. Yeah. My contract dedicated me to a billet in Intel, which we call it. So I didn't have to join and then choose where I wanted to go. I immediately joined knowing I was going to get a billet or space or position in Navy intelligence.
How does that happen though? I mean, it just...
So I joined as a reservist, not active duty. So as a reservist, we do the 1 week in a month and 2 weeks a year or more. I volunteered for a lot more. But when you join up, you get slotted into a specific billet and you have to go through and complete a training, right? So normally it's about a year-long training and you have your A schools and C schools, which are, a beginning training and advanced. And so I had a year-long program, basic intelligence reserve training course, I think it was called, BRIT training. And I had to complete that. And after I successfully completed that training, then I got assignment, and my recruiter, because I lived in Rhode Island at the time, said, oh, you'll probably get assigned to the War College in Newport. So you don't even have to move. So you can stay in Rhode Island. And I thought, brilliant. I'll go through the training in Massachusetts. I'll go to the War College. How cool does that sound? And so it was great. And I did that. I actually finished my training in less than a year because school is very easy to me. I just got my master's, so I was used to very intense coursework. I finished it early. I got assigned to the War College in Newport, and gosh, it was maybe my fourth weekend there. Was assigned to wargaming. So I was in the wargaming, which if you remember that 80s movie, super cool, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I thought, oh, wow, I get to do it in real world. This is going to be awesome. And I had a commander come up to me, who I'm still really good friends with today. And he asked me, he said, Lena Sisco, I have an opportunity for you. We want you to join this special new program. The Marines are coming to talk to us today about it. It's called IPW, Interrogation Prisoners of War. And I thought, yeah, I don't know about that. I like my war gaming. I'm not sure about this interrogating and prisoners, and I don't know. So I listened to the Marines that afternoon, and he came up to me, the commander, and I said, sir, thank you for considering me, but oh no, this is not for me. And I went home, and I was so upset with myself because I just gave up a challenge.
Sure.
I thought, how am I supposed to grow as an individual and professionally if I'm not accepting the challenges that come to me? So I thought about it, and I went back Sunday morning, and I said, sign me up. I don't think I'm going to be a good fit, and I may fail out the first week because I don't think I can keep up with the Marines, but I'm going to try it anyway. And thank God, for that decision, because it's kind of led the path to where I am today.
Fantastic. I'm curious, what did the commanding officer say when you went back and said, I'm in?
He was so happy. He was like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do it? Because we think you'd be the perfect fit. And I was like, I'm sure. And he's like, yeah, he was very happy.
Why were you the perfect fit?
Very interesting question. I have an answer. So I asked him that as well. He said, listen, you're young, you've got a lot of energy, you're outgoing, you're charismatic, you're a people person, and this job requires you to interview and interrogate people. And inherently, you come with that ability to connect with others and to talk with the others. You have confidence in what you do, and that's all requirements to be an interrogator. You fit kind of the mold of what we're looking for. I didn't realize it at the time, but he had seen that in me. And so that's why he's like, you're the perfect fit.
I'm curious, part of my background in psychology and in coaching is to delve into personality theory, behavioral theory. Is there a behavioral characteristic, archetype that makes someone like yourself better suited to that role versus, like, I'm a very process detail-oriented guy, okay? I mean, I'm flexible, I can adapt, but I know what my go-to is. Is there a personality characteristic or archetype that lends itself more to being in a role of an interrogator?
I'm going to say no, because I worked with fellow interrogators who were the opposite of me. They were introverted and not extroverted. They were process-driven. I am not process-driven. I'm highly intuitive. So I'm on the fly thinking of how things affect me and how to work with contextual information. It's just how I, take in information. But I work with people who have the opposite personality of me, and they're amazing at doing what they do. So I always tell people, don't use your personality to your advantage in whatever job you do. But even when it came to my job as an interrogator, just bring your personality and all the strengths that come with that and use it to your advantage. If you have to learn to be a little more flexible, then you learn how to do that. If you have to learn to be a little more introverted, like in my case, I had to learn to stop talking so much and listen more. And so you adapt and you learn those things as well.
Okay. So you're in this role since 2003-ish. How long did you continue doing this work with the military, doing the interrogation, doing these interviews? I mean, frankly, with some very not so nice people, bad people. What kind of toll did that take on you? I mean, I could see, I mean, you and I chatted before we started the podcast. You sail. And I also noticed on one of the prep notes that you like vineyards. So sailing and wine.
Yes.
Those go, by the way, my boat was going to be perfect margarita.
Oh,
but so
nice.
So sailing and wine, margaritas to me go hand in hand. But how does someone get into this role, perform, deliver, and really come out of this being able to still enjoy life?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. So I will tell you the toll that it took. And one of the things that affected me, I still have to struggle today, because my husband, just told me maybe 2 days ago, you have to stop being an interrogator with me, Lena. So when it comes to my personal relationships, if I ask a question and the answer is either I don't know or something that's not a narrative statement, right? I'm not getting information. Oh, I'm going after it. And I go after it. And I will start into all my techniques. And I start with my direct questions and my follow-up questions. And I'm trying to exploit this stuff. And he gets so frustrated because he'll tell me, he's like, you go into interrogator mode. It's like a light switch. Yeah. And when you want an answer and you don't get the answer that you want, or you don't get enough information, man, you're like a dog who won't let go of the bone. And you will just stay on that topic. So it has really, my work in what I do as an interrogator has affected my personal life, because in some situations I may dig a little too hard and a little too much and become that interrogator. So I have to be mindful always of how I'm speaking to other people and how I come across verbally and non-verbally, and to listen more to people and practice empathy more than just trying to get information out of them. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. There was one time in my life where I would call it the light switch because I was able to turn it off, but I can't. It's inherently there as a baseline now. So I have to work to tone it down.
Fair enough. And I love the fact that your husband knows when it's happening and he goes,
oh, yeah, he does. He does.
There you go. So yeah. I'm curious now. So you're in this role. When did you set out to make the shift? Like, okay, I'm done with this. You went on, you've authored a couple books. One of them ties back to this role as the military interrogator, and again, in a very bad place, or in an okay place, I suppose, with some very bad people. But when did you decide, I want to train others? There's a role for me to help others know what I know.
Oh, gosh, that decision came, I guess, when I started my company in 2013, because as an interrogator, I was strictly focused on training military personnel and government personnel. I did that for years, decades even. And I thought that only people in law enforcement and intelligence would benefit from it, until I really started noticing how much I used it in the workplace and in organizations. And I used it in leadership roles, because all of my techniques were actually helping me become a better leader and mentor to people, and even a coach. So my ability to ask clear, concise questions always resulted in getting some good, concrete information and not making up assumptions about things. My ability to actively listen to what people say allowed me to collect factual information instead of me putting a spin on it, or being able to recognize when I did put a spin on it. So all of those skills I learned as an interrogator, I think, fall into interpersonal communication skills. And I started using it in my leadership roles, or even as a team lead, or working with others. And then, of course, when I started my company, how to gain clients and customers and provide them with this. And then I realized, wow, I need to start training other people in the private sector this skill, because they could enhance their professional relationships. They can use it to achieve any goals that they have. They can profit from this. So that's when I really learned, hey, this skill is way beyond just training law enforcement and interrogators in the military and catching bad guys. It can be used just to interact with any type of human in any type of circumstance.
How does this differ? And maybe it doesn't, and I mean no disrespect as this question is coming out. I have read over the course of years Robert Cialdini's I think it's The Art of Influence. And you read the book and you're getting these little anecdotes. This is why this ad worked. This is why that ad worked. And so if you do this, this will happen. How is the training and the education you are delivering and imparting on others different than this art of influence, where in a marketing and advertising, because that to me is a marketing and advertising perspective. They're trying to influence me, whether, like I just bought a car this weekend. Since I live in Vegas, I want to go up in the mountains. No lake for me to sail. Well, there is a lake to sail in, but in any case, the car did nothing for me that I drove. But there was a red car on the lot. and talk about my heart skipping a beat.
Yeah.
So I left with that car. So how does your work differ from this intentional influence as far as that kind of training?
The first thing that comes to mind and how it can actually be similar, because when we're talking with people and we're either trying to coach, mentor, lead them, or you're in a situation where you're interviewing someone and you need to get the truth. If you're, interviewing a criminal versus someone applying for a job in your company or somebody in an HR issue, right? We're always seeking the truth. And so when I teach people how to be a good interviewer in any situation, what I'm doing is really teaching you how to create a safe environment to influence that person to feel comfortable enough to open up and tell the truth. So it's funny when you ask me that question, I know you asked me the opposite, but I was thinking, wow, I think I see more of a similarity in the influence way. But for me, it's influence people to do the right thing. And it's influencing people to be honest with other people.
Okay. Fair enough. So let's talk about the company and the training that you're doing. Who are the typical or not so typical? Who are the folks that are coming to you and saying, are they saying we need help? We need to get better at this? Clearly from a reputational standpoint, you're at the top of the apex. What are they coming to you for? What are their issues, their struggles that they need you to come in and help them?
It's twofold, really. One is what I just described, is that they're in a role to talk to people and interview people and get the truth. So I just was a keynote speaker last week in person, actually. I was so excited. It wasn't virtual, I know, for about 40 people, because most of them couldn't come because their employers still had concerns because of COVID. But they were a group of the lead human resources in this area. And they conduct a lot of investigations, and they're responsible for what I think is the most complex organism of an organization, which is a human being, right? Because humans are so complex and we're so different. So I spoke to them. I have financial auditors coming to me saying, help us identify when people are lying about claiming XYZ or, divulging all of their assets or being truthful when it comes to taxes and this, that. I have got health practitioners coming to me asking me, how can I talk to my patients and influence them to open up about everything that they're experiencing, so they don't feel embarrassed and hide stuff, or they don't feel ashamed and not willing to be open, regarding what they're experiencing. I have got a lot. I talk every single year, this will be my 5th year in a row, to the graduating deans of the colleges of pharmacology. And so what they're doing is they're going on to universities around the nation to be the dean of the College of Pharmacology. How do they communicate with all of the students? How do they communicate with their faculty? And how do they know when they're being truthful, right? So it really has this huge spectrum of people who come to me. And of course, I still have my law enforcement. I train law enforcement. I've been training a lot of them. I train them in interviewing and interrogation, but I've also started training the supervisors in law enforcement and leadership roles as well. So I do a bunch of leadership training for that. But when it comes to body language, people come to me and say, okay, I am in this role now. How do I gain the confidence and trust from all the people that I'm reading? What do I need to do? What do I need to know about how I come across to others? Because if people aren't telling me that, some of us have no idea. We may think we're coming across one way, but we're coming across the exact opposite way. And so really learning more about self-awareness is huge. It also ties in with our biases and how we, perceive information differently from other people. That ties into our personality preferences. That even ties into our change style preferences, because we all have a preferred way of handling change. Some of us love it and want change all the time, and some of us are like, a little cautionary about it, right? And so I think, when people come to me, it's everything about self-awareness, communication, our preferred inherent styles, personality, how we prefer to make decisions, how we actually speak to people and the words we use. How do we conduct an effective interview? How do I read body language so that I know that the person I'm with is nervous, and how do I make them comfortable again? So a lot, sales, marketing, huge clients of mine. Gosh, I have aerospace industries that come to me. So it really is a broad spectrum.
Will individuals this whole topic is very interesting to me. In the spirit of full disclosure, you and I have a mutual friend, coaching colleague who I adore.
Yes.
And would someone like me, again, who's not part of a big company, an individual, maybe has an interest, are folks like me going to come to you as well for just to get educated?
Yes. And so last year and for a few years in the past, I was struggling because individuals would just reach out to me. They'd find me online or find my website and say, hey, could you help me with X? So I would love to attend training, your body language training, your detecting deception training. When are your next classes offered? But the problem was, up until this year, all I trained was, big organizations and law enforcement. And so I would fly or go wherever to train people. I didn't have classes for just anybody who wanted to attend. And then COVID-19 hit, and I started working on online training. And I thought, oh, a brilliant way to reach anybody and everybody. I don't have to travel to you. You don't have to travel to me. You can still see me. And now I have 4 courses online. I will be coming up with a lot more, and you can learn from the comfort of your own home. And you and I can get on a Zoom and discuss stuff as well. So I thought this is the perfect way just to meet individual needs who want to, I refer to it as going on the journey, right? The journey to self-awareness and learning more and always remaining a student, which is my motto, by the way. But it allows people, whoever you are and whatever you do, just to get some training online.
That's fantastic. I think, COVID-19 has really created a lot of issues, but it's also created some unanticipated opportunities. And so it's good that you're able to do that. Speaking of COVID-19, and we are one global issue, very, very bad, very dangerous. We have the issues with the Black Lives Matter, the people who are getting killed, the excessive use of force from law enforcement. And we have I try never to go down the political road. However, we have somebody in one of the top offices in this country who's made a living and loves it.
Right.
The art of the lie. It's not the art of the deal. It's the art of the lie, where it's become, it's like looking at the back of my hand. It's very familiar. How do we use these skills that you have available to help others? How do we begin to change the dynamics that are going on in the country with what you have to offer?
So some of my interpersonal communication and leadership training really focuses on checking in with ourselves. Most conflict arises because of what we say and do to each other. We have a lot of perceptions about when people say something to us or do something. If we don't have all the information to identify it, we make it up. Well, they must have meant this. Well, they did that because of. We don't know. But we want to know. As humans, we always want to have that information. But when it's not there, we fill it in. We make up a story. I always tell people that you have an event and then you have a reaction. And usually the event causes an emotional reaction. I like to use the example of being cut off in traffic, right? Somebody cuts you off in traffic. What usually happens? The reaction. We get pissed off. And as an Italian, I will tell you, I have known to do some hand signals I probably shouldn't have, but that's me. So when I ask people, I'm like, well, what made you pissed off? What got you angry? Everybody says, well, somebody cut me off in traffic, the event. But that's actually not what makes us angry. Not at all. The missing ingredient that makes us angry is the thought we have about being cut off. So somebody cuts us off, we think, how dare you? Where are you going? That's more important where I'm going. You could have killed me. You could have banged up my car. We could have gotten into an accident. Those thoughts create the negative emotional reaction. When we learn to change our thoughts, we can change our behaviors and change our reactions. So instead, the next time somebody cuts you off, you think instead, maybe they're rushing to the hospital. Maybe they're rushing to the vet. And all of a sudden, it's hard to generate that anger from that thought. Instead, we probably have more sadness, or we have more empathy from that, and the anger dissipates. It's really hard to change our thoughts, especially when we've been we're used to having the same thoughts over and over about situations. So hard to put the pause button and say, wait, stop. Let's look at this situation objectively. Let's not jump to a conclusion or jump the gun. It's very, very hard work to do. And most of us don't like to think that we make wrong decisions and that we have to change our thoughts. But oh my gosh, if we could just check in with ourselves and realize that most people out there aren't out to get us or harm us or hurt us, and just be a little more empathetic, we can start to communicate with people differently. And then there's less defensiveness, and then there's less conflict and less aggravation. And the more that we can maintain this control of our emotions and our behaviors, the better relationships we have with other humans. And it starts, people say, but wow, even if I just change mine and I start working on this, we still have so much going on in the world today. How could I even begin to affect this? You can. And I always tell people, it just starts with one person. And then one person turns to 3, and 3 to 7, and 7 to 18, and so forth and so on. So it can spread. We just have to work at it.
Fair enough. So I'm curious. You're obviously very busy. You've got, when you have the opportunity, you're traveling somewhere for a class or a keynote, you've got the online courses. What else is on your plate that you're working on that you'd like to share?
I just got picked up for my 3rd book with HarperCollins, and I am ecstatic. I'm so happy. And it's going to be about interviewing, but with a leadership focus. So if you conduct any type of interview or conversation, this book is going to be for you. And of course, I'm going to bring in a lot about body language. I'm going to talk a lot about mindfulness, about our thought work, and about our words. I'm a word nerd. I will tell you that. I'm very selective when I use my words when I have to in an interview, because we can say things that can immediately put somebody on the defensive. And we're scratching our heads going, what on earth did I do? What did I say? I didn't know how I came across. So really teaching people how to speak all over again, so that somebody on the receiving end doesn't get defensive and doesn't get aggravated with us. And then, of course, I will be teaching you what to listen for in order to determine whether or not you should believe the words coming out of somebody's mouth. So really effective interview techniques. After my time in Gitmo, I learned the valuable lesson that you attract more bees with honey than vinegar. And I came up with a method, and I thought, I need to figure out a new way to interview people. It's not accusatory. It's strategic in nature. It's based on rapport building. It is also calling the elephant out in the room and not being a pushover, right? It's using that tough love approach, but all with, always remaining respectful. I also have a theory: don't tell, ask. Don't tell people what they did or why they did it. All you have to do is ask people. A lot of times emotions and conflict arises because we have a tendency to tell people, you're angry, you're mad at me. We have no right to do that. We may see it, right, in a facial expression, but instead of assigning an emotion to someone who's only going to come back and say, no, I'm not, or get mad, ask them how they feel. How do you feel right now? Let them tell you how they feel. And this way, there's no cause of defensiveness. But it's really going back and figuring out, how do we speak to people? Do we, unwittingly cause conflict and have no idea just because we're using sentences we shouldn't or words that we shouldn't?
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to reading that book. So I hope you'll let us know. And perhaps you'll even come back on the podcast to chat about it.
Oh, I'd love to.
So when you're not working, what do you do for pleasure?
Oh, gosh. So I have a great love of animals and sailing and wine. But, the animals, I have dedicated and volunteered time for 15 years now in some capacity to animal care, whether it was at SPCAs, at zoos. My last volunteer job, which I'm hoping to get back to after COVID-19, was as a bird of prey handler. So it was with injured birds I took care of and did programs with owls and hawks, which I love. And my other love is sailing. So I grew up sailing a bit, racing in my late 20s, and then I left it for a long time And I just got back into it with my now husband, and he and I bought a boat 2 years ago, and we sailed her everywhere. And this was a boat that had no power, nothing. So I was the one hoisting sails and bringing them down and cranking the winches and all of that. And this year in March, we finally upgraded because I told him, all right, listen, as the first mate, I put in enough sweat and work in this boat. I want a boat, I press the button and the sail goes up. So we found her and we've been sailing her like crazy too. So we really love to be on the water.
Fantastic. And I was going to say, who sets the spinnaker? That was the one that always used to scare the daylights out of me.
Oh, he loves putting up the spinnaker. I don't. It's pretty, but I'm like, it's just too much work and it's too much worry.
Yeah, mine always ended up underneath the boat. Oh my God.
I know.
Oh my God. So I really appreciate you, taking the time out of your day to chat with us about your work and, some of the projects that you've got going on. Congratulations that, you're about to embark on your third book. That's fantastic. I equated writing one book as like birthing a baby. I'm not doing that again. I actually love the podcast because I love these conversations. It's so much easier for me than to sit down and try to write. If you're going to provide some, a piece of advice, or maybe you read an article or a book, not your soon to be written third book, but is there something that you would like to leave our listeners with that, you should go watch this? It could be a TED Talk. By the way, you are an accomplished TEDx speaker. So we didn't mention that in the introduction, but is there a book, a video, YouTube, an article, just given the times that we're in, to help us, to inform us, to become better listeners, just to be more empathetic? Anything that you would recommend for our listeners?
Boy, you caught me off guard on that one, because if I had known this, I would have come with a whole bibliography reference page for you, because there's a ton of good stuff out there. I will say to everybody listening, and tell your friends and peers and all that, do your due diligence as a human and always strive to educate yourself. So I recommend going to TED Talks and just looking up something on emotional intelligence or communication, maybe thought work. There's a great website that your listeners will love, and it's called mindvalley.com. Oh my gosh, the information and the wonderful people on there. I feel like a whole new person just listening to one of their videos. And it really helps with the emotional intelligence and being calm and working with empathy and thought work. It's so great. So mindvalley.com is a wonderful website. And I will leave with this quote that I use in one of my training quotes. My last slide was by Gandhi. And he said, "An eye for an eye will only make the whole world blind."
Love it.
It's a lot in that one quote.
Love it. Thank you. Lena, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, where are the best places for them to go?
So they can actually just Google my name, Lena Sisco, which is LenaSisco. And I have a personal webpage, which can redirect both to my company's website, which is thecongruencygroup.com. And it also has a link to the website I use to host all of my online training, which is tcg.thinkific.com.
Fantastic. And we'll most certainly put backlinks to those sites on our show notes, as well as to mindvalley.com as well. Lena, it's been an absolute pleasure to learn more about you and your work. And I find it incredibly fascinating. And, really, it's amazing how we sometimes we unintentionally fall into things that become so much bigger than we ever thought we could be. And you're just doing some phenomenal work. And there's just so much going on in our world today that we need to have better conversations, better listening, and talking to understand, listening to understand versus reacting to react. So thank you so much for sharing all that you've given our listeners today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Howard.
All right, folks, we have just been chatting with Lena Sisco. She is the founder and president of the Congruency Group. Lena is a former Navy intelligence officer, DoD certified interrogator, and really since 2003, she's been training government, military, law enforcement, the private sector in everything from interviewing, interrogation, body language, leadership, communication skills. She's an accomplished author, and she is now both a trainer, both in person when she gets an opportunity, and also now virtually. And so really do go out and check her work. You can visit her at lenasisco.com, which will then take you to the Congruency Group, her company page, as well as the tcg.thinkific.com. And of course, we're going to provide backlinks for you. And also we'll provide the link to mindvalley.com. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Do let us know. Go out to the successinsightpodcast.com, leave us a comment. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know why. If you've got any questions, ask. Also, you can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook at successinsightpodcast.com. And above all, folks, remember, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, be safe, take care of yourself, take care of your family, be kind to your neighbors. And above all, go out there and have a phenomenal day. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Success Insight Podcast. Take care now.
Success Insight is a production of Fox Coaching and First Story Strategies. Find us online, successinsightpodcast.com.